transition there. And yeah, so it's cool to see how DevOps introduced us taking our service from pets into cattle. And now I think Smackstack's taken their users into cattle. So it's quite cool to see that. But yeah, from as Diana said, from cattle to sheep. You'll see what I mean in a moment. I'm Raimund. I'm from a team at GitLab called Contributor Success, which means absolutely nothing to most people. We focus on looking after our contributors to the GitLab open source side of things. And yeah, I'm here to talk to you about how to get started on that journey. Who am I? I have been at GitLab for just over 3 years. I live in London. There's a non-rainy picture there. And yeah, I'm an engineer, so I write code as much as possible, but I also like to talk about writing code every now and then, so that's why I'm here. Before we get into some of the important stuff, I want to tell you a little story. I know everyone's had some lunch, everyone's getting a little bit sort of restful. It's the afternoon, I understand. So yeah, bear with me. Little story, we'll be a little bit active after this so that we can hopefully get some blood flowing. But picture, if you will, there's the sheep, a medieval town, and this medieval town is a small little town, and they're growing, and their primary industry is the raising of sheep, whether the sheep are used for wool or meat or whatever. That's how they've based their industry. Now, as the town grows, everyone's happy. The sheep are grazing on the town commons. Everyone's good, and there's plenty to go around. There's plenty for everyone, and over time, the town just continues to grow and continues to prosper. But what happens eventually is more sheep are added. Eventually, the town starts, the common land starts to get depleted, and we start running into problems. Now, people are now fighting over who's got access to the land, who's overusing it, etc. And we can start to have various discussions around, whose responsibility it was to look after the common area. Maybe we should have done it in a different way. Should we have regulated it? Who's maintaining it? Has anyone given any thought to that little old hermit in the corner that's actually sort of out there every day, actually trying to make it better? But yeah. And this is just a little story to kind of just talk about how what these things that are really common out there, we tend to take for granted, and we don't really think about them until such time as they become an actual problem. And when they become a problem, that's when we need to think about things. So sometimes maybe that's too late. What does this all have to do with anything? Well, if the town commons didn't exist, each of those farmers would have had to spend 3.5 times what they spent in looking after their cattle. Maybe the town wouldn't have been as prosperous, maybe they wouldn't have grown as quickly because their cost base would have been that much higher. And yeah, still maybe not feeling familiar? Let's switch that around. If we're talking software, those town commons is open source. And if you weren't using open source, if you weren't using open source in your business, if you weren't building your applications using open source, whether you're deploying open source, things like Kubernetes, whether you're using open source frameworks, React, we've already spoken about. If you didn't have any of that and you were building software from scratch entirely yourself, you would have to spend 3.5 times more to build the same product. That's quite a scary number. So, story's over. Let's jump into a quick little bit of physical exercise to get everyone thinking, get everyone moving. Who here in this room has contributed to open source today? Please stand up. Right. These are the people
in general
after your town commons. Yeah, please stay standing. This week. Anyone this week? Keep standing. We're trying to get everyone up. We're trying to grow. All right. It's the end of 2025, so let's expand the target. Who's contributed to open source this year? All right, everybody, please give these people a hand. They're looking after your town commons. They're looking after the open source commons. Who here has used open source software today? If you're not standing, please stand. So that just goes to show how pervasive open source is. Thank you very much for standing. But that just goes to show just how pervasive open source software is, and maybe we should be giving it a little bit more attention and channeling just a little bit of our efforts into it. If everybody spent a little bit of time looking after that common space that everyone was benefiting from, we would have a much better environment. This is a quote from one of our customers, Siemens. You may have heard of them, a small little German firm. But yeah, they made a decision many years ago to not maintain any local patches of any of the software they're using. If they need something extra in the software they're using, they contribute it upstream and then they wait for it to be released, and they adopt it that way. And they're absolutely benefiting from that cycle themselves, but then everyone else benefits too. So most of you have possibly seen this cartoon in the past, and it's really true. Who here has heard of, I see we're getting cut off there, but who here has heard of the XZ project, which is a little library that's used in most Linux distributions, and about a year ago, there was a potential supply chain takeover where the one maintainer of this project was heavily overworked, heavily, didn't have any time, so he decided to try and share the load, and somebody worked their way into his confidence, and he gave maintainer access to this other person, and that other person injected some malicious code into the project. That malicious code was very, very nearly released into all Linux distributions, which would have basically made anything running Linux massively vulnerable to an open, to a backdoor. This is very real. This isn't theory. This isn't something that could happen. This is something that very nearly almost happened. And this is the reality of open source out there. Yeah, we're fortunate. We've got a nice, big, busy open source community, but there are many open source projects out there that aren't maybe as busy and maybe as, but still very, very important to the way the world runs. My own story, I was a GitLab user in my previous organization. We were busy moving on to GitLab.com and doing some migrations out of Jira. And when we tried to access something in one of the APIs, I ran into a problem. Okay, I can see these fields there, but I can't actually set these fields. And I want to be able to set them, so I logged an issue, because that's what you do. You go to a project, log an issue on the issue tracker, and I looked at the issue tracker and there were 60,000 other issues, and I just sort of had a little laugh to myself, and I said, yeah, no one's going to look at my little bug. So how can I fix that myself? How can I, solve my own issue? I had no Ruby knowledge, but I said, GitLab's open source. How hard can it be? So I forked the project, downloaded the code, and later that day, I think an hour or two later, I already had a merge request created and pushed up in the system. And I thought, cool, I'm done. That was easy. And then the pipeline ran and failed and gave me lots and lots of red, and there was tests broken and everything. And I was like, okay, now I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. But fortunately, a couple of really good reviewers guided me through making those changes, finding the tests, updating the tests, and within a few days, probably about 2-3 hours total, I had my merge request actually merged, and shortly thereafter rolled out into production. And what I've highlighted there is the top right. That was when I created my issue initially. That was when I created my merge request initially on the 24th of September. It was merged on the 1st of October. That's really not a long time to be going. And at the bottom there, that timestamp is that's when it went into production. We were running on GitLab.com. So that is, if anyone could do the mental maths, 8 days from when we ran into an issue to when my team was completely unblocked. That's the power of open source. That's the power of being able to feed that engine yourself, to be able to look after that instead of waiting around for someone to pick it up, product manager to prioritize it, we just went and solved the problem. That makes me a maker. Anyone else? All of you who are working with contributing to open source, you're also makers. Right? The world needs more makers because, unfortunately, there are many takers out there, and takes are okay, but we actively want to continue to grow that open source community, whether it's the GitLab itself or other open source projects. The more that everyone contributes back to open source is better for all. So let's discuss for a moment why people contribute. All right, everyone has different reasons, but they can pretty much be broken up into one of two types. All right, you've got intrinsic motivations and extrinsic motivations. So extrinsic motivations is things that someone will get. So obviously, you need money because everyone needs to be paid. So people who are working for open source companies are getting paid with extrinsic motivations, but there are other things, praise, public recognition, etc. But then there's also the intrinsic motivations. There's the things where you're learning another language. I had never picked up Ruby before. I decided, hey, let's look at GitLab, and now I consider Ruby probably one of my primary languages. So, these other motivations are also a really good way to figure out why people contribute and what makes them work. And when we work with contributors, it's also good for us as an open source project to understand what those motivations are and why people are actually contributing. So what have we done to make contributing easy? Well, first of all, we need to understand what is a contribution. Who here thinks that a contribution is code? Okay, so no one's really only just thinking that contribution is code. There's way more going on than contribution. Of course, code is one way to contribute, whether it's back end or front end. Sometimes contributing with code review. Actually going and looking at how other people are building and solving solutions and offering opinions on the process is a really good way to get involved, and it's sometimes a good way to learn the code base because you can actually see how other people are approaching solving problems. Contributing with designs. Early stage time when someone's like actually working on a new feature or something, there's usually an issue, there's usually something going around, and people start to post wireframes, or this is what it could look like, or this is a flow that would work. That's a great time for users to be getting involved in the process, because this is how I would use it, this is what would make sense for me. Helps us make sure that we get the product right the first time around. Anyone here use GitLab in a language other than English? Everyone using English? So no one's using a translation? Well, if you were using a translation, all of those are community contributed. So you can switch it to German. Maybe you can start an Austrian dialect translation of GitLab. But yeah, these are fantastic ways to get involved, and they're a good way to get involved with the community. Whether that's the GitLab community or any open source community, of course. And then the other way is issues. Whether that's looking at an existing issue and actually contributing to that discussion, giving us extra context, helping us with logs or something like that, or creating issues of your own to explain a problem or an issue you might be having in the system. Now we've built a contributor platform that you can go and check out at contributors.gitlab.com, which is itself an open source project, and we go and pull stats from the GitLab project and use them in there, and I'll talk about that a little bit in a moment. So when you join the platform, you get a personalized contribution sort of journey, and we help you along the way. We point you into some documentation, give you some guidelines of how to go find issues, how to find something to work on. Of course, if you've got something that you want to work on yourself, that's always a good way to start too. When we started this process a few years ago, we ran a survey across our users, our contributors, and less than 50% of the contributors that we actually brought through a brand new contribution into the product were able to successfully complete. The tooling was difficult, the process was fragmented, and it was just really difficult for contributors to get started. We reran that at the beginning of 2025, and we got everyone through that process, and we had some really nice things said about the whole process. So maybe you work or you use a different open source product, or a different open source project. Maybe you want to adopt some of these practices yourself to help your own contributors get stuck in, but also we've got a great community we've got swag. What happens on the contributor platform when you log in, as you add contributions, whether that contribution is code, issues, discussions in the forum, discussions on our Discord, you gain points mean prizes. As I mentioned, we've got swag. You can see we've got like a leaderboard there. We do quarterly hackathons where anything contributed over a certain within a week counts towards the hackathon. It's a great way, again, to leverage your own understanding of the GitLab system. Take a look maybe under the hood at how we use GitLab to build GitLab. So we've spoken a couple of times today about pipeline definitions and pipelines. Crack open our .gitlab ci.yaml, and you can probably spend a few days understanding how we have a pipeline that takes 2 or 3 hours to run when it runs at its fullest, and it runs a few million tests. But yeah, it might be, you might be able to learn something, you might be able to pick something up, you might be able to contribute something back and say, hey, you know what, if you did this and this, you might be able to speed up your own pipelines by something. We're always open to learning from our own users too. And of course, the other thing we give you is we give you the tools of the trade. So the primary tool that GitLab developers use to build GitLab is a tool called GDK, or GitLab Development Kit, and we've made that accessible to all of our community contributors. So you can get started, you can get going with using GDK, and everything that you need to be working just like a member of the GitLab team would be doing so. So the premise of the talk, I mentioned co-create. So what is co-create? And this is the sort of important side of it. For those of you who've never contributed to open source, do any of these questions feel familiar? Well, I don't really know where to start, or my code's not good enough. I don't have time to learn a new code base, or there's legal processes, I don't understand licensing and I don't understand how that would work, or my company doesn't give me time to do it. Many of these things are familiar to somebody who maybe has used a bit of open source but never really quite felt comfortable enough to contribute. This is one of the reasons why we built the Co-Create program. So if we could eliminate those barriers and actually send you one of our team to guide you through those steps and to really just make that whole process a lot more seamless, a lot more open, and we help you build those first couple of contributions together, that's exactly what the Co-Create program does. There's a quote from one of our alumni, and yeah, but the idea here is that instead of just leaving you to discover our open source project, discover our tooling, figure it out all by yourself, you get a very targeted, very specific guide that helps you through the process. How does this work? Well, a couple of weeks before the sort of engagement, we get you set up. Who here likes 3-hour Zoom calls? Well, if you're lucky, it's less than that, but you get to spend a chunky Zoom call on a call with myself or one of the other engineers in my team, where we'll help you get up to speed with using our tools, get up to speed with doing everything. And then for the actual engagement, we have one of our engineers come to you wherever you may be, probably Austria if you're all in Vienna. But we have one of our engineers come and spend a week with you, guiding you through those steps and helping you make your first contributions. Hopefully leaving you at the end of the week with a little bit of knowledge about our code base, a little bit of knowledge about how things work, and leaving you with a little bit of confidence to then go and continue to contribute going forward. So the next time you run into something where there's a field missing in an API, you don't think, oh, let me just go create an issue, you think, well, let me just go fix it. A couple of more quotes out of this. But yeah, so we've had a number of companies go through this with us from various areas of the industry, and it's really refreshing to see the overwhelmingly positive feedback we get from the program. So if you did want to do this, if this is sounding something you'd like to give a go, please feel free to scan that, apply, chat to me afterwards, or reach out to your GitLab account team, and we can certainly have that conversation. And the best part of this, I've kind of built up to this moment, is that if you contribute to open source, you can be twice as productive as a similar firm doing similar things that isn't contributing to the same tools. Right? That's because you get that through deeper knowledge of the tools, better efficiency, and better use out of those. You get better value out of them. So I've been talking a lot, and time for something more practical. Everyone likes a demo. Hopefully demos go well. When do I get my fixes? I mentioned earlier how it was sort of eight days from the beginning of my MR to production. Well, if you're using GitLab.com, you have the benefit of as soon as your merge request is actually merged to the product, it's probably deployed in the next several hours into production on GitLab.com. If you're running self-managed, who is not running self-managed? Okay, there's a few of you on GitLab.com, which is great. But yeah, if you're running self-managed, then your code would go into the next minor release, which is the third Thursday of every month. And then that's just a snippet out of what happens at the bottom of every merge request. Our bot goes and swaps around labels, so you can actually see it going through the stages, going through our environments, and you know when your code is actually live. So I'm going to break out slides here. We're going to fix something. So this is something that hopefully everyone in this room has seen. It's a GitLab issue. And this was logged in February 2022 by one of our team members at the time. And basically what it is if you have a large mermaid diagram, you get an error message at the bottom of the mermaid diagram saying, oh, we can't display this because it might break your browser. Which is nice, but you have to scroll through a very large mermaid diagram to find the error message. This is logged February 2022. And if we just go through some time here, not much happened. Not much happened. The bot kind of pinged it every now and then. Eventually, a year later, the bot said, you know what, nothing's really happening on this. I'm going to close it. It's kind of done. It's really not happening. And a couple months later, in August, somebody said, hey, you know what, this is still a problem. Can we still do this? Here's a big piece of mermaid, and I'm going to actually recreate it in this issue. And obviously, you can see, spoiler alert, the error message is now at the top, but I'll show you recreation. So he helpfully posted a nice long mermaid, and then some other people were like, yes, we're also seeing this, we should do this. A lot of people spending a lot of time talking about this issue. Finally, a friend of mine pinged me and said, you know, can you have a look at this? And I said, yeah, we can take a look. And I looked at it on a Friday morning, and less than 15 minutes later, I had a merge request up. And I'm not a front-end engineer. I may be full stack, but I don't really do JavaScript. And it took me less than time. So we're going to fix that right now here. And I've got my copy of GDK. And as you can see, we have recreated the issue here. So you scroll down through that, helpfully provided by the one person who did comment on the issue, Long Mermaid. And there's the error message at the bottom. And if you click on that, then it renders the whole thing. So how would I even go about starting to fix this? So the first thing I'm going to do is let's just copy the error message. So I'm going to open up this code, make it a bit bigger so you can see. let's just search for the error message, because if we don't know where the file is, we don't know what we're looking for, hopefully search will find it. And okay, we've got a lot of hits there. And if we scroll through that, we're actually going to see these are all of our localization files. So for every language and region that we support, there's a different copy of that error message. We don't need to fix any localization here, so let's keep searching through the errors. Alright, that's a spec, so spec is a test. There's another spec there. Tests aren't what we're looking for. What else do we have? Let's scroll to the top here. And we got something here. So, hold on a second. We've got this one looks interesting. Rainbow Sandbox Mermaid. That looks like exactly what we're looking for. Now, I'm going to bring this up on the screen. If somebody in the room can spot the error before we get there, I will issue you a reward on our contributor platform to be able to plant a tree, which is great. So I'm going to bring this code up, and let's see if we can find it. Now, bearing in mind this issue was open for 1.5 years. People spent a lot of time on the error, trying to figure it out, moaning about it, before we looked at it. Let's just actually click on where's the error message come up. And so there we have the JavaScript that actually creates the error. And can anyone spot a potential fix there? So there's the error message that gets created. Any takers? Someone? Sorry?
Delete, create, alert.
Yeah.
Remove it.
then you don't get an error message at all. But yeah, that's one way of fixing the problem. You don't get an error at the end. Yeah. Anything else?
Markdown block after, before.
Exactly. Yeah. So we've got the markdown block creates the alert after and not before. So let's change that to before. Let's see if that works. When I did this, I was like, hey, let's try put before and see what happens. And actually, GDK is reloading my issue for me, and we fix it. We now have an error at the top of the thing. And that is precisely all the change actually needs to go. Yes, there's actually a test there, and the test just checks to see is the error box actually created. Probably what we could do, we could actually go ahead and make sure that we're checking to see that error message is happening before, but we don't currently. So the tests work, and if we go back to the issue, we can go right back up to the merge request. This was the one that fixed it, and sum total of the change was changing before to after. So I wish every fix was as simple as this one, and I'm sure all of you do. If all fixes were as easy as this, things wouldn't necessarily be broken for as long. But it's a great way to show that not every fix that's out there, that's maybe been sitting out there, an issue being open for a couple of years, not every one of those is a long fix. It just takes somebody to take a couple minutes, search for the error, figure it out that way. And a really powerful way just to show how simple a fix can be, and yeah, a great way to get started with making a change. So that's pretty much all I had to share with you. If you did want to get started, feel free to scan either one of those, or chat to me in one of the breaks that we have left over. Thank you very much for listening, and anyone got any questions?
So when it comes to new features,
Yes.
somebody needs to take care about the feature fits into the content.
So great question. I mean, if somebody wants to contribute a new feature, how would we make sure that that fits into everything? So typically we could start with an issue and tie that into the product management team, and we can have that discussion with them. sometimes an even easier way, especially if it's a smaller feature or something like that, we can even start with that merge request, because that even gives us a little bit more idea of what that might look like and how to test it, and we can even sort of almost take it for a ride. But yeah, we would definitely probably connect our product team in to make sure that it does fit with the roadmap and it does fit in the direction that they want to go. Sometimes it might be just slightly off, and with a little bit of iteration on that contribution, we can actually make it fit quite nicely. In a small case, in small cases, sometimes things are quite misaligned, which does happen. But generally, we can make it work.
So a couple of the open source communities that I participate in had a recent influx of contributions that were generated by LLMs that were really low quality and didn't really fit or weren't necessary at all, or also issues that were opened up that weren't actually issues. Have you seen that with GitLab as well, and how do you deal with those?
Yeah, so just to repeat the question, some open source communities see an influx of LLM generated merge requests, pull requests, or indeed issues. Have we seen that at GitLab? Yes, we have. For some time we've had issues over time with all sorts of spam, even before LLMs, people trying to use GitLab issues or merge requests to promote themselves in other ways, or whatever the case is. If it is a genuine user trying to do something and maybe just bringing in some sort of low quality contributions, we have ways of trying to guide that user through learning how to contribute. But in some cases, if it is really spammy or really just trying to automate the process or to game the system or something like that, we have a code of conduct that we can hold up to the user to, and we have ways of banning or removing those contributions or shutting them down.
But is that still a manual process, or is there automation in place?
There-
SonarQube, for example, they have introduced a feature to auto-detect code that is likely generated by LLMs. Is GitLab employing any?
So we're not currently looking at contributions at that level. I don't think we've found enough of them to warrant any sort of mass thing. The one thing we do have is every contribution that comes in will get at least 2 human reviewers on it. If not, additionally, GitLab Duo will also do a review. So if it is completely outside the scope of anything, then it will very quickly be spotted. But if it's a viable contribution, whether or not it's generated, as long as there is a user on the other side of it, if it's a viable contribution and it manages to get through at least 2 reviews. If it's maybe hitting front end and back end, it could have even 4, 6 reviewers sometimes, depending on the size of the contribution. But with a particularly large code base, it's difficult to bring in a not really viable contribution, because it's difficult to get the pipeline to pass and actually to get something of a level of quality that's
So reviewers are only added once the initial pipeline at least has passed.
The reviewers are only added once the user actually requests a review. So one of the first messages that you'll get in a contribution will be from our bot, which will give you a thing to click through our contributor platform to request a review. And at that point, it will actually request a review. But we also do have a number of team members that will look through new reviews and make sure that they are categorized so that the various product teams know about what's coming in and what's going on.
Thank you.
Cool. Yeah.
So if I create a merge request, there is a definite way to make sure that someone will review it. And if I only create an issue, is there some kind of guarantee that someone will look at it, or
Less of a guarantee with issues, although we do have a couple of more recent initiatives to make sure that we don't have large number of issues going unnoticed. So something will hopefully get picked up on there. We do have bots that do try to pick those up, try to get them categorized. As soon as it gets categorized, hopefully the right product teams will get an eye on it. But with merge requests, it definitely needs, there's going to be an engineer that's going to look at it to try to triage it, to get it into the right place. But yeah, you'll also need to then say, okay, I think it's ready for a review, and pop your hand up and ask for a review.
Is there a possibility to contribute to the non-free versions of parts of GitLab, and how is that dealt with?
Yeah, absolutely. So the GitLab codebase is in a single repository that just has dual licenses. So everything that is part of the sort of free section is under an MIT license.
Yeah.
Everything that is one of our paid features is under our Enterprise Edition license, which is also open for contributions. It just sits behind a CLA. So there's a contribution license agreement that you can enter in with us, and you can freely make contributions to that code.
So even as an ultimate customer, you can use the GDK to test
Yeah.
possible contributions to the
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we get the feature for free then?
Would be nice, but unfortunately not. Cool. Well,
And
yes,
another question, or input here. You know, because some people are looking for motivation to co-create, you forgot to mention something very special because customers love GitLab swag.
yes. Well, I didn't forget it so much, but maybe I sped past it. But as you do contribute, you move through levels, and you do contribute. You gain access to our contributors reward store, which is unique swag for our contributors only.
Yes.
You can go and sort of check it out at rewards.gitlab.com. And yeah, as those items are available generally to contributors only, the more you contribute, the more you have access to those. And whether you're taking part in a co-create or you're joining in with a hackathon, there's always places to win some contribution prizes. And yeah, you'll be getting one sent out to you to be able to plant your tree or to bank it for something else if you choose to.
We should also say that the GitLab employees do not get that swag, so it's very unique.
It's very unique, very just co-create.
Yeah.
Specific.